There is a script that I run in my head. I'm sure you guys do this. You have this moment that you recreate in your head because you can ping around these certain emotions, like those arguments that you have in the shower, or, just when you're home alone. There's this one script that I run in my head about this evergreen training where we're sitting around and, it's like the first time we're meeting everybody. And this is my senior year, I think. So I've been there for 3 years, and all of a sudden, or 4 years, and all of a sudden, everybody's supposed to declare their pronouns. And you go around and you listen to everybody declare their pronouns, and it gets to me, and I make like a joke. I remember I made like some sort of slight joke, and it wasn't offensive. It was just a very mild kind of. It always reminds me. This tactic always reminds me of something I heard about when you're trying to be brainwashed, or when you're in a torture situation in a foreign country, which I guess a lot of this stuff is like that. But there's this trick where they tell you to do something and you have no control, but you find one tiny bit of control that you have over the situation, and you exert your agency, right? And the image that sticks in my head from reading this however many years ago was that somebody was in that situation and just shifted their chair. They were told to do this or that, and they just shifted their chair just a tiny little bit. And that's what I did. I didn't do anything in that moment. I didn't do anything to stand out so much, but I did like kind of just tell a little joke, like he, him, it, them, or whatever, something lame. I didn't expect it to land good. I didn't expect anybody to laugh, but the amount of silence that I felt. Everybody was, like, knows in that moment that they shouldn't laugh, they shouldn't do anything. And that in and of itself told me more about that which was going on than the fact that pronouns were on the table. It wasn't that we had to declare our pronouns. It was the amount of sanctimonious righteousness that was in the room to force everybody to do it. That's what was controlling that situation. And I have this script in my head that I run in my head, and I don't know why I do it, but I just go through and I just think about that situation out loud and tell these people off, And I take the tack that these employees of the state are telling me, a citizen who's also an employee, what to say, what not to say. And I just kind of go through this script in my head about, you can't tell me what to do. You can't tell me what to do. And, I imagine myself being in that situation again, and I imagine a number of people out there that might be watching this are going to be put in that situation, or have been put in that situation. And I know you can't speak up and you can't tell people off. Some people will tell people off, and good for you. If you have the cojones to tell people off, good for you. But most people aren't going to do that. This stuff is set up in such a way that to make a scene diminishes your credibility. So you cannot make a scene. So that little script that I run in my head is good for getting my jollies off or getting myself amped up about something. It's that, what's that one Eminem song about the spaghetti? Some people use that song to get up and pumped, So I have these little scripts in my head, like these reconstructed little tight, tenuous moments that I avail with righteous anger over the righteous snobs, but that's not going to really work. And that's a cheap way to do it for me. That way I know doesn't play out well, especially in a corporate professional setting. You have to take a different stance. You have to say, well, okay, listen, there are these disparities in the world. And how do we provide for a correction of these disparities? How do we actually provide for the correction of disparities? And to answer that question, just tentatively, just allow me to walk a line and say that there are ideas that you can put into the cultural soup, which ideas will foster the creation of prosperity. Prosperity of wealth, prosperity of spirit, prosperity of mind, of creativity, prosperity of heart, generosity. There are certain values that we can put into the cultural mix that will allow people to create enough wealth of all these different types such that they will want to share that wealth with other people, and then allow other people to become wealthy in these various different ways. Right? Wealthy in terms of creativity, which involves play. Wealthy in terms of material wealth, which involves hard work and intelligence and all these other values, right? Now, we're going through this training right now. Let's just imagine we're going through this training right now that says that there's these disparities that have existed for 400 years. And those disparities have not ended. And the civil rights and these liberal ideas have come. And what have they actually done? They've raised everybody up, but relatively there's so much disparity. Well, are you ever going to solve relative disparity? That's the question. I don't know. I don't know if you're ever going to solve relative disparity, but certain ideas, that came from certain traditions have produced a lot of wealth and produced a lot of good times for a lot of people, produced a lot of good art, produced the capacity for the creation of wealth in all these different ways. And then there's these other ideas that have actually taken wealth and based on that disparity have reduced everybody's wealth, because it's that disparity that they're trying to diminish. So in order to diminish the inequality of the people on the bottom and the people on the top, what you do is you just take away from the people on the top and then everybody's poor. You don't want to go down that route. And that route isn't just with material wealth. That route is also a moral sort of wealth. This is my main point. I want to use very lightly the idea of reparations. Very lightly, I want to extract that from the American story of repaying the slaves and repaying all these successive oppressions and disparities that have been enacted on a certain race within America. I just want to extract just the idea of reparations. And what you see is that there is a moral sort of reparations that are being enacted on people by means of compelled speech, which is essentially dumbing everybody down to the same level. It's essentially robbing people of their curiosity, of their intelligence, of their wit and their laughter, so that everybody's at the same lowest common denominator, which has always been a phrase that has frustrated me. Because I always wonder, well, what's the highest common denominator? What's the highest common denominator? Seriously. So just that term reparations, what I see happening is that the moral authority is being redistributed so that certain people can have it now, right? And those people aren't necessarily the people of this certain identity. It's people of a certain sort of attitude and character are the ones who enact this reparation. I tried to go in one direction, but I ended up in another direction. I had this moment where I was going through that script in my head and I was proposing it in a different way. And the way that I was proposing it wasn't to argue with it, wasn't to react negatively towards that. There's a number of different reasons why you don't want to react or overreact to this. But if you can put into that space, if you can put into everybody's head a broader way of viewing the world than one that is based on disparity and oppression and the eroding of unfairness, if you can put a sort of stance, if you can put a certain stance into the conversation where you're just bigger than actually what they're trying to reduce you into. And in you being bigger than what they're trying to reduce you and everybody else and humanity into, most people will say, oh, I see how small this worldview is and how restrictive that is and how limiting and limited that is and how that will not produce wealth. Again, not just monetary wealth, but wealth of spirit. If you can do that, if you can capture that into a bottle and then kind of hand it out, snidely, not snidely, but carefully and measuredly, I think that's the way forward. I think that is, there's something to explore in there. So people ask me what they do when they get put into these situations. And this is what I'm going to say right now. Don't bite off more than you can chew. don't take on the entire project. Don't think about this as this theoretical mindset that's existed for decades. Don't get into this big theoretical argument or trace back Robin DiAngelo's ideas into critical race theory and then cultural Marx. Don't do that. Don't do that unless you are actually in an academic context and you actually know all the literature. Take just a bite that you can chew. Make just a statement that you have the time and the ability to cogently put into the mix. Right. That's the first tip. To see that something's going wrong and just take a little bite out of it, or where it meets up against you, challenge it in some way. Don't make a big stink. Don't make a big deal. Just take a bite out of crime. Just a little one. The second one is find like-minded people. And I don't know exactly how to do that. I made a post a few weeks ago about avoiding being canceled, but there's different ways to recognize that there are friends in the mix or people who aren't on board with this stuff. And it's not necessarily the person that's angry with it. There might be a glimmer in the eye. We might need to come up with one of those little handshake dealios, right? Where we can spot each other. People who are not going to swallow this pill, whatever color it is. I don't like the pill analogy. It's overused and used to limit me into another, drug-induced stupor. Anyway, so don't bite off more than you can chew and find friends. Find like-minded individuals. I want to say allies, but that word is poisoned. Find people who are free thinkers. And be patient and calm and face it. Most of it will just blow through the company. Hopefully, over the course of the next few weeks or months, I will connect with people and be able to initiate a process of getting resources out there in the world that can help people. Pamphlets or tips, 5 little step diagrams or flow charts of why I'm actually just not racist instead of anti-racist. It's good to be against something. It's good to be against oppression. It's good to be against racism or whatever it is that is the bad thing. It's good to be against the bad thing. Many people aren't aware of how easy it is to become a monster when you fight monsters, right? Many people are so unskilled at looking into the abyss that not only does the abyss look into them, but it completely swallows them whole. Ultimately, I'd really like to just put some silence out there, just say, remember to relax. Because we're bigger than this. We are. I'll get you.